6 months later, Zara stood in front of a tall mirror in the university's guest quarters, carefully adjusting the ceremonial sash that marked her as a bonded warrior of Zirian. Today was their formal bonding ceremony, a beautiful blend of human and Zirian traditions that would make their partnership official in both cultures. The past months had been a whirlwind of positive changes. David's new position had brought researchers and students from across the galaxy to study at the university. The campus had become a hub of interspecies learning and cultural exchange. Zara had become an unofficial ambassador, helping other aliens adapt to Earth culture while teaching humans about the vast galaxy beyond their small world. She had also started teaching self-defense classes to anyone who wanted to learn, regardless of age or species. Her first student had been Riley, the blue-haired activist who had changed everything with her courage and determination. Now her classes were full of humans eager to learn from a real Zirian warrior, not because they feared her, but because they respected her skills and wisdom. "Are you ready for this?" David asked, appearing in the doorway dressed in traditional Earth formal wear with a beautiful Zirian honor cord across his chest, a gift from Zara's mother. "I've been ready since the day you first claimed me on that space station," Zara replied, taking his offered arm with a radiant smile. The ceremony was held in the university's botanical garden, surrounded by plants and flowers from dozens of different worlds. Representatives from Zirian sat peacefully beside David's family, who had traveled from across Earth to meet and welcome their new daughter-in-law, Zara's mother, an imposing woman who shared her daughter's red skin and warrior bearing. Had been skeptical at first about this unusual pairing, but David had won her over completely by learning traditional Zirian greeting rituals and showing genuine, deep respect for their ancient customs and values. "David is small compared to our people," she had told Zara privately with a knowing smile, "but his heart is the size of an entire planet." As they exchanged personal vows they had written for each other, Zara's markings created intricate patterns that, according to Zirian tradition, only appeared during true bonding ceremonies. The assembled guests from many different worlds gasped in wonder at the beautiful display of bioluminescent art flowing across her skin. "Before I met you," Zara said during her heartfelt vows, "I thought strength meant standing alone, never needing anyone, never showing weakness. You taught me that real strength comes from choosing to stand together, from being vulnerable enough to love and be loved." David's voice was thick with emotion as he replied, "You showed me that love isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into your existing world. It's about building an entirely new world together, brick by brick, day by day." When they kissed, to seal their eternal bond, the crowd erupted in joyful cheers from representatives of dozens of different species: humans, Zirians, Altarians, Centaurians, and others who had come from across the galaxy to witness this historic union. The celebration lasted well into the night under a canopy of stars. Zara found herself surrounded by children, both human and alien, who begged for stories about her adventures among the stars. She told them tales of brave space captains and distant worlds, of honor and friendship that could bridge any gap, of the importance of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Later, as the party began to wind down, David found her sitting alone on a bench in the garden, looking up at the brilliant night sky with a peaceful expression. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her and following her gaze. "To the stars, my father," Zara said softly, her voice full of love and remembrance. "I wish he could have met you, could have seen this day. I think he would have liked you very much." "What makes you say that?" "Because you see the same thing in me that he always did. Not something to be feared or controlled or changed, but something to be celebrated exactly as it is." David took her hand, intertwining their fingers and marveling at how perfectly they fit together despite their differing. Look around you, Zara. Look at what we've built together in such a short time." Zara surveyed the garden, where beings from across the galaxy continued to mingle and laugh together like old friends. Children of different species played games that mixed traditions from multiple worlds. Scholars discussed research projects that would benefit everyone. Couples who had met through their example held hands and planned their own cross-species futures. We did this, David continued with quiet pride. Your courage, your honesty, your absolute refusal to hide who you are. It changed everything, not just for us, but for so many others. A young Zirian girl with markings just beginning to develop ran up to them, her eyes bright with excitement and hero worship. Zaraketh, she said in carefully practiced English. Will you teach me to fight like you? To be strong and brave? Zara knelt down to the child's level, remembering her own fears when she first arrived. What's your name, little warrior? Kara. My family just arrived from Zirian last week. Everyone here is so different from home, and sometimes I feel scared and alone. Zara smiled with understanding and warmth. Being different isn't something to fear, Kara. It's something to celebrate and share with others. And I promise you this, if you're brave enough to be yourself, exactly as you are, you'll find friends who love you not despite your differences, but because of them. As the little girl ran back to her parents, with renewed confidence, David squeezed Zara's hand meaningfully. See, he said softly, that's our real legacy, not just our own love story, but all the love stories that will come after us because we made it a little easier, a little safer for the next couple, and the couple after that, and the ones after them. Zara leaned against his shoulder, watching the stars above and thinking of all the worlds spinning out there in the darkness. Somewhere among them was Zirian, her birth world and the place of her childhood. But here, surrounded by family and friends from across the galaxy, she had found something even more precious than a homeland. She had found home itself. The bioluminescent patterns under her skin pulsed in a rhythm that Zirian poets said only appeared in the presence of true, lasting happiness. For the first time in her life, Zara understood exactly what those ancient words meant. She was no longer the unwanted alien warrior that no one would claim. She was Zaraketh Chen, bridge builder between worlds, teacher of the next generation, protector of the innocent, and beloved partner to a man who had seen her heart before her appearance ever mattered. And she was exactly, perfectly, completely where she belonged. Over the next 3 days, David and Zara met for every meal. What started as research questions had become something much more personal. They found a quiet table in the corner of the station's dining hall, away from the curious stares and whispered comments. Tell me about your family, David said, pushing his half-eaten meal around his plate. He was always more interested in listening than eating. Zara's golden markings flickered softly under her skin. My mother is the head of our family's warrior house. She trained me from the time I could walk. My father, she paused, looking out at the stars beyond the viewing port. He died protecting a mining colony from raiders when I was 12. I'm sorry, David said quietly. Don't be. He died with honor, saving innocent lives. On Zirian, we celebrate such sacrifices. But it meant I had to grow up fast. Zara's voice grew stronger. My mother taught me that our strength exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's why I became a patrol officer, why I spent 5 years guarding trade routes. Is that how you got hurt? David gestured toward a particularly long scar across her shoulder. Zara nodded. Pirates attacked a passenger ship, mostly civilians, families with children. I held them off until backup arrived, but took some damage in the process. She shrugged as if it was nothing important. David stared at her with something like amazement. You single-handedly fought off pirates to save strangers. It was my duty, Zara said simply. No. David said, shaking his head, it was heroic. Most people would have run or called for help and waited. Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. On Zirian, doing your duty was expected, not praised. But the way David looked at her, like she was something special, made her feel strange and wonderful at the same time. What about your family? She asked, changing the subject. David smiled. Much less exciting than yours. My parents are both teachers back on Earth. My sister runs a small bookstore. Very quiet, very normal lives. He paused. Sometimes I think they worry about me traveling so far from home for my research. Why do you do it then? Study alien cultures. Because I believe understanding each other is the key to peace in the Galaxy, David said, his eyes lighting up with passion. Every species has something valuable to offer. Your people's honor code, the Altarians' diplomatic wisdom, the Centaurians' trading ethics. Imagine what we could accomplish if we truly understood and respected each other instead of fearing our differences. Zara felt those golden markings pulse brighter. She had never met anyone who saw the galaxy the way David did, full of potential instead of danger. On their second day together, David asked about Zarian courtship rituals. Zara found herself blushing, her markings shifting to a warm amber color. It's very formal, she explained. Potential partners must prove themselves worthy through tests of strength, wisdom, and dedication. The process can take months. That sounds intense, David said. It ensures compatibility. Zara replied, but here, among the other species, no one wants to participate in our traditions. They find them too demanding, she searched for the right word, too honest? David suggested. Zara looked at him in surprise. Yes, exactly. I think that's what I admire most about your culture, David said. Everything is open and clear. No games, no pretending to be someone you're not. That evening, as they walked through the station's observation deck, Zara felt something she had never experienced before. Not the formal interest of a potential match, not the respectful distance of a colleague, but something warm and comfortable and real. David, she said suddenly, why are you really here, at this station? I mean, he stopped walking and turned to face her. Honestly, my research proposal got approved, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to gather data for my thesis. But now, he ran a hand through his hair. Now I'm not sure that's the whole truth anymore. What do you mean? I mean that I've learned more about myself in the past 3 days than I have in 3 years of research. Talking with you, hearing your stories, seeing how you view the world, it's changed something in me. Zara's heart began to beat faster. Changed how? I've always believed in the importance of cultural understanding from an academic perspective. But you've shown me what it means on a personal level. How someone's differences can make them more beautiful, not less beautiful. There was that word again. Coming from David, it didn't feel like empty flattery. It felt like truth. I should tell you something, Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow is my last day here. If I don't find a match, I have to return to Zarian or accept other arrangements. David's face fell. Other arrangements, work contracts, service positions, ways to stay off-world that don't involve partnership. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars stream by through the massive viewing window. What if there was another option? David asked quietly. Zara's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? I mean, David turned to face her fully, his brown eyes serious and warm. What if someone wanted to claim you? Not because they needed a partner for political reasons or status, but because they genuinely cared about you? David, you don't understand what you're saying. Claiming someone means taking responsibility for their life, their future, their happiness. It's not something humans do lightly. No, David agreed. It's not something anyone should do lightly. But Zara, these past 3 days have been the most real, most honest, most wonderful days of my life. You've shown me what it means to live with honor, to find strength in truth, to see beauty in differences. Zara's markings began to pulse faster, shifting from gold to brilliant amber. But your work, your research led me to you, David said. Simply, maybe that was the point all along. They talked until the station's night cycle dimmed the lights around them. They spoke of dreams and fears, of the future and the past. David told her about his childhood on Earth, about always feeling like an outsider in his own world because he was more interested in alien cultures than human ones. Zara shared stories of growing up as a sensitive child in a warrior society, of learning to balance strength with compassion. On Zarian, Zara said as they finally walked back toward their quarters, we have a saying, the heart knows its home, before the mind understands the journey. What does that mean? David asked. Zara stopped walking and looked at him. It means that sometimes you know you belong somewhere before you understand why. The next morning came too quickly. Zara stood at her small window, watching the stars, knowing this might be her last day aboard the station. She had packed her few belongings, unsure whether she would be heading back to Zirion or to some unknown work assignment. The announcement came over the station's communication system at midday. All participants report to the main hall for final matching declarations. Zara's heart pounded as she made her way through the corridors. She had barely slept. David's words echoing in her mind. Had he really meant what she thought he meant? Or had she misunderstood his kindness for something more? The main hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Successful matches stood together, glowing with happiness and hope. Others, like Zara, stood alone at the edges of the crowd, trying to accept their fate with dignity. "Attention all participants," the station coordinator announced, his gray skin shifting to a formal silver color. "We will now begin final matching. Declarations. All unclaimed individuals will be given their departure assignments after the ceremony. One by one, couples stepped forward to formalize their bonds. Zara watched them with a mixture of happiness for their success and sadness for her own situation. She tried to spot David in the crowd but couldn't see him anywhere. Zaraketh of Zirion. The coordinator called out this was it, time to face her future alone. Zara walked to the center of the platform, her head held high despite the breaking of her heart. She would face this with dignity, as her father had taught her, as her mother expected of her. "I declare my intention to claim Zaraketh as my chosen partner." The voice came from the back of the hall. Zara spun around, her heart stopping as she saw David pushing through the crowd of surprised beings. "David," she whispered, hardly believing what she was seeing. He reached the platform and took both her hands in his. His own hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was strong and clear. "I know this is sudden," he said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "I know we haven't followed traditional protocols, but I can't let you leave without telling you how I feel." The hall had gone completely silent. Even the coordinator stood frozen, uncertain how to handle this irregular situation. "These past few days have been the best of my life," David continued, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. "You've shown me what it means to live with honor, to find strength in honesty, to see beauty in differences. You've made me want to be braver, stronger, more truthful." Zara stared at him, her markings beginning to glow brighter and brighter. "You barely know me," she said softly. "I know that you risk your life for strangers. I know that you speak truth, even when it hurts. I know that you've never pretended to be anything other than exactly who you are." David's voice grew stronger. "I know that when I imagine my future, you're in it, but your research, your career on Earth will adapt." David said firmly, "My research led me to you. My career can follow wherever we go, in Earth." He smiled. The lights in the massive space station were too bright, and Zara felt every eye in the room watching her. She stood at the edge of the matching platform, her red skin glowing under the harsh white beams. At 7 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel, she knew she looked different from everyone else here. This was her third time at the Galactic Partner Station. 3 times she had hoped, 3 times she had failed. The blue-skinned trader from the Centauri system took one look at her battle scars and shook his head. "Too dangerous for family life," he whispered to the station worker, but Zara heard every word. Her skin flashed brighter red, a sign that her anger was rising. "Another rejection," announced the station coordinator, a tall gray being with kind eyes. "Perhaps you should consider lowering your expectations, dear." Zara clenched her fists, the metal railing beside her bent under her grip. "I will not pretend to be weak just to find a partner," she said, her voice deep and strong. "I am a warrior. I protect those I love. If someone cannot accept that, they are not worthy of me." The coordinator sighed. She had heard this speech before. Round the platform, other beings whispered and pointed. Some even moved away, as if Zara might attack them at any moment. The truth was, Zara had never hurt anyone who did not deserve it. On her home planet Zirion, female warriors were honored and respected. They were the protectors, the guardians of their families and communities. But here, among the stars, everyone seemed to want partners who were quiet and gentle, She remembered her mother's words before she left Zirian. "You have a good heart, my daughter. Someone will see that one day." But after 3 years of rejections, Zara was starting to doubt those words. "Excuse me," said a voice behind her. Zara turned around, ready for another curious stare or rude comment. Instead, she found herself looking down at a human male with dark hair and curious brown eyes. He was smaller than her, like most beings were, but he did not seem afraid. "I hope you don't mind me asking," he continued in a friendly tone, "but are you from Zirian?" Zara blinked in surprise. Most beings could not even pronounce the name of her planet correctly. "Yes," she said carefully. "Why do you ask?" The human's face lit up with excitement. "I'm Dr. David Chen. I study different alien cultures for the university back on Earth. I've read so much about Zirian's warrior traditions, but I've never met anyone from your world before. Your people's history is fascinating." "Fascinating?" Zara repeated. She could not remember anyone using that word to describe her people. Usually, they used words like violent or primitive. "Oh yes," David said, pulling out a small device that projected holographic images. "The way your ancestors united 7 different warrior clans to create a peaceful society? The honor codes that have kept your planet stable for over 1,000 years? It's incredible. Most civilizations that start as warrior cultures destroy themselves, but yours found a way to channel that strength into protection and justice." Zara stared at him. No one had ever spoken about her people with such respect and knowledge. You actually studied our history?" "I've been researching it for my doctoral thesis," David explained. "I'm here at the station doing field work on how different species form relationships across cultural barriers. But I have to admit, meeting someone from Zirian wasn't something I expected. For the first time in months, Zara felt her anger melting away. Her skin returned to its normal shade of red, and the stressed lines around her eyes softened. "What would you like to know?" she asked. David's eyes sparkled with genuine curiosity. "Everything. What was it like growing up in a warrior culture? How do your people choose their life paths? What are the coming-of-age ceremonies like?" They found a quiet corner near a large viewing window that showed the stars streaming by. Zara began to tell David about her childhood on Zirian, about learning to fight not for conquest but for protection, about the proud moment when she earned her warrior marks at age 16. "These scars," she said, pointing to the thin white lines on her arms, "they're not from battles. They're ceremony marks. Each one represents a vow to protect the innocent." David leaned forward, studying the patterns with the eye of a scholar. "They're beautiful," he said simply. "They tell the story of who you are. Beautiful." No one had ever called her scars beautiful before. "What about your bioluminescent patterns?" David asked, noticing the faint glow beneath her skin. "I read that. They change with emotion, but I've never seen it in person." Zara felt warmth spread through her chest, and sure enough, gentle golden lines began to pulse along her neck and arms. "They show when we feel content," she explained, slightly embarrassed. "Amazing," David whispered. "Your people evolved such a sophisticated way of showing their true feelings. It must make it very hard to lie or hide your emotions." "Yes," Zara said softly. "We are taught that honesty is the foundation of honor." They talked for over an hour. David asked thoughtful questions about Zirian's government, their art, their philosophy of strength through protection rather than domination. Zara found herself sharing stories she had never told anyone, memories of her grandmother teaching her to meditate before battle, of her first successful mission protecting a merchant convoy from space pirates. David said as the station's meal chime sounded. "I don't suppose you'd like to continue this conversation over dinner? I mean, if you're not busy with the matching process." Zara looked around the platform. Most of the day's potential matches had already paired off or left. The coordinator was giving her meaningful looks, clearly preparing another lecture about being more flexible in her expectations. Zara hesitated. Was this human asking her on a date? Or was he just being friendly for his research? She had been wrong about people's intentions before. David seemed to sense her uncertainty. "I should clarify, I'm not actually here looking for a partner. I'm just a researcher. but I genuinely enjoy talking with you, and I'd love to learn more about your culture. No expectations, no matching protocols. Just two people sharing a meal and good conversation. Something about his honest, straightforward manner reminded Zara of home. On Zirian, people said what they meant and meant what they said. I would like that, she said as they walked toward the station's dining area. Zara caught sight of her reflection in a polished wall panel for the first time in months. She did not see a rejected, unwanted female. She saw a warrior with stories worth telling and a culture worth sharing. Maybe her mother had been right after all. Maybe someone would see her true heart eventually. She just never expected that someone to be a curious human with kind eyes and a genuine smile.